All right, friends, we are live. Sorry, we're a minute late here. All right. So, welcome back once again. We are back inside. It's a little chilly outside for me today because I'm a wimp. But if you are watching, please leave an emoji in the comments. Say hi so I know you're watching. And yeah, we'll get on with it. It's going to be kind of a jam packed day today. So, thanks for joining us, taking the time out of your day. I really appreciate it. So, we're back on our normal-ish schedule. Hey, Nancy, to go over, our campaign update, COVID update, county update, and all that. And we will be talking kind of government 101 today. And I'll tell you why in a little bit. So, first thing I do want to remind you about is Tuesday, August 11th, we are having the primary election, and I do have a primary challenger, and I do need your votes for that. So if you have not voted yet, please go do so on Monday. You can vote early in person at the Government Center in Chaska, or on Tuesday, you can vote at your polling location. Please, please, please go do that. It is vital that we get through this first round in August to move on to the general, and we are set up to win it. So I'm very excited. So we got to get through August 11th, so please go vote. If you are voting by mail, I do want to remind you that the ballot has to be received by Tuesday the 11th. It can't just be postmarked. That's not going to be good enough. And same for the general as well. Unfortunately, the state legislature did not change that for this year. And now we're seeing some less than kosher or less than appropriate moves by some government officials that are slowing down the Postal Service. And I do have that on good authority from someone who works at the Postal Service that is happening. So if you're concerned about that, you are also allowed to drop off your ballot in person on election day. You just obviously can't vote twice, so make sure you're not doing that. But if you have it and you haven't mailed it yet, you may want to go ahead and do that on Tuesday if it's safe to do so. All right. Please keep safety in mind at all times. That's my number one goal for everyone. I would hate for someone to get sick trying to vote. So please take care of yourselves and keep that in mind too for the general, that you're going to probably need to mail your ballot in quite early. I've requested mine online already, and actually Nancy put the link in the comments. So you can click that, request your ballot for the general today even, and it'll come, I think September 18th is when it starts. So yeah, you can also vote early on Monday, mention that, or your polling place on Tuesday. There is a letter to the editor that we were not able to publish in this upcoming week's edition of the Chaska and Chan papers. So we will be posting that letter to the editor on our Facebook page. And I would just ask everyone who's seeing this ahead of the primary to share that widespread to all your friends and family and neighbors, everything, so we can get as many eyeballs on that as possible. So unfortunately, we were not able to post it in the paper. So last thing I will say about the primary is we are having a ton of phone banks this week. GOTV is what we typically call get out the vote. And that's our kind of exciting, reminding people to go vote. So you're not doing any kind of persuasion calls or anything like that. You're just reminding people to go vote on Tuesday, the 11th. Yep. And leading up to that, we're going to be calling and calling and calling and calling. So I need a lot of help. I will be on the phones a lot personally myself. Hey, everyone. Yay. Thanks for joining. So if you are interested in helping us win this race, win this primary and get on to the general, we need your help. We need your phone calling skills and abilities. And we have such a great team that has been putting in a lot of hours, a lot of time, on their own schedules and their own time, and just been amazing. So I hope that you can join us for that. We are going to do some fun Zoom room phone banking. So if you're interested in volunteering and helping us out, we do need you. Doesn't matter if you've never done it before. It doesn't matter if you're scared to do it. We'll help you out. We'll make sure that you're confident and you know what you're doing. And GOTV is a really easy, fun way to get that done. So to get your feet wet. So let us know. You can sign up on the website. You can call me, text me, email me, email Nancy, our volunteer coordinator. We'll get you on the list. We'll get you trained in. All right. Okay. Next thing, lawn sign reminder. Our lawn signs are almost here. I'm so excited. So if you've requested one online or through one of my team members, we've got you on the list. If not, make sure you go ahead and sign up on the website. It's under the Get Involved tab, request one, and we will have one delivered to you when they get here. We're really excited. So in addition to that, if anybody knows a neighbor with a really good location, or a family member, or even a business owner that has a great location that they wouldn't mind having our sign there, please contact them or have us contact them, and we will see what we can do. I'm not, there's a few businesses in the county that are willing to have any candidate sign that asks. So I'm not too picky, as, if one of my opponent's signs is up there, we're not going to put ours. It's, not how we roll. So keep that in mind as well. We're okay with sharing space as long as we get the space too. That's cool. So, all right. So now our negative topic, our COVID topic here. The recent news is that coronavirus has expanded into greater Minnesota at the rates that we were trying to prevent them from expanding into greater Minnesota. So that could have a lot to do with travel, folks from the Twin Cities going up to greater Minnesota or up north to their cabins, not being careful, not social distancing, that kind of thing. So unfortunately, it is hitting our rural areas, and our rural hospitals are feeling the pain. Luckily here, we've had a decent amount of hospitalizations. Actually, I talked to a nurse on the phone just this week who works at a local hospital, and said that they're seeing an uptick. And they're seeing an uptick in cases from 18 years old to 34 years old, that age range, my age range, as a result, not of community or, congregate living, elder care facilities, apartments, that kind of thing. That's not where this uptick is coming from. It's coming from parties. It's coming from gatherings. So if you are insisting that you need to have a party and you're not going to do it outside, even if you are outside, I would still suggest, as the CDC and MDH both suggest, that you require masks. A request that masks are worn and 6 feet of social distancing is maintained. And of course, hand washing, all the stuff that I talk about every week. I recently went to the grocery store for the first time in a while. And the majority of folks in there were wearing masks. There was maybe one that wasn't. So it's, we're still on this uptick. We're still seeing new cases confirmed and new hospitalizations. So as of today, we have 744 confirmed cases in Carver County, and we have 39 hospitalizations. And we're still at only 2 deaths, which one might say 2 deaths, that's not that bad. But put yourself in their shoes, okay? That's still someone's family member that they will never, ever get to see again, that they will have to celebrate holidays without. And that breaks my heart that somebody in this community, 2 families in this community, are facing that right now because of something that potentially could have been prevented. Just think about those folks. When you want to go out and you're not sure if you should wear a mask, or you're not sure if it's really a big deal, or, you've heard that it's not as bad as the flu, whatever, keep that in mind, okay? I've said it before, and I'll say it again and again and again. Wearing your mask in public is such an easy way to signal to other folks that you care about them. You might not know what that person's family situation is or their health situation, but it signals to them that you care, and that's meaningful. We are under the mask mandate right now, so indoors you do have to wear them. There's a lot of discussion, and I kind of want to clarify a couple things around the ADA, that businesses can't ask for proof of a disability, so you could potentially not wear a mask and say that it's a disability preventing you from wearing a mask. That's a little aggravating if that is not the case. Okay, so if you don't, let me put it this way: using the ADA protections is actively harming those who actually need them, because it just chips away at the public's trust in them and what they stand for. So I'll say the same thing for using service animals that aren't actually service animals too. When you do things like that, it degrades the integrity of the ADA and the protection. So just keep that in mind. The ADA says that businesses have to provide a reasonable accommodation if you cannot wear a mask, or some other disability that you might have. The businesses do have to provide a reasonable accommodation. That does not mean that you get to just skirt the rules of the mask mandate and it's fine. That means that you should maybe contact those stores and see if there's a time period where you can come in without a mask that's more appropriate. You don't get to risk the entire population of the store and the staff because of ADA protection. So just keep that in mind. I again, to quote Dr. Fauci, I don't know how to tell you that you should care about other people. So it's heartening to see that there's more mask wearing happening. It's really disheartening to see that it's still not happening in some cases. So please just keep that in mind and do the best you can. All right. Last thing we'll touch on before we get to our big topic of the day is the school opening announcement. We recently heard from Governor Walz, and thank you all, by the way, those of you who tuned in last week to hear our discussion on everything public education with our esteemed guests, and thank you to those guests for donating your time and efforts and expertise to that. That was just amazing. And I really hope to continue those conversations as we go through the election and into, when I'm elected. Bringing everyone to the table. Love it. So we just heard from Governor Walz and, several other really, really awesome people at that news conference last Thursday to talk about how schools are going to be opening safely, because we're not getting a lot from the federal government in that way of thinking. So I went through, to be clear, I have not personally talked to the superintendents. We are reaching out to arrange meetings with each of them to just chat about this stuff and other things. So this is all either public information or things that I've learned through my time on the phones. So the Waconia School District, ISD 112, Superintendent Pat Devine, awesome guy, said that they will follow MDH, CDC, and MDE guidelines. MDH is the Minnesota Department of Health, CDC, Center for Disease Control. That's a federal organization. And then the MDE is the Minnesota Department of Education. And I know the commissioners for MDE and MDH and their staff, and they're incredible, and they're very, very hardworking. So I do have a lot of trust in them. So Pat Devine said that they would follow those guidelines, which is great. Their first 2 weeks of August, they're figuring out details. So they've been kind of planning for whatever scenario might pop up. And now they are figuring out details. The last I heard was they are going to send out a district-wide email on the 7th of August and, outline the options, right? They will, regardless of whatever they decide to do, they will have a distance learning option. And they would prefer, if there's a hybrid model, to do like an A-B schedule. So an A group would go in person on Mondays and Thursdays. The B group would go Tuesday, Friday, and Wednesday would be used for those that need a little bit extra help, maybe a younger child or someone with, some type of learning disability or anyone who needs extra help, that kind of thing. And they are also weighing childcare options for those younger learners that we have. So ISD 112, Superintendent Lisa Sales Adams, I'm a huge fan of hers so far. They are also leaning towards a hybrid model. They're going to be releasing their sports and activities outline on the 6th of August, and then their learning model details on the 11th of August. They do have community engagement opportunities. So if you are a parent in that district, please get involved and go to these community engagement opportunities. There's a couple kind of generally wide ones on the 12th and the 14th, and then there's specific ones for elementary school, middle school, and high school on their website. Please go check that out. They are also surveying parents online, and I believe that's right on their homepage. So go ahead and fill out that survey. It helps them, figure out details and what everyone's comfortable with. Central School District down in Norwood Young America, Superintendent Tim Schoshemeyer, I think, is also doing a parental survey or parent survey on their website. They have low class sizes, so they're a little easier there to socially distance than, say Chaska High School, for example. So they will be leaning towards that model if it's appropriate. And they are also asking parents to drive as much as they can, since the buses will be all operating under 50% capacity. So they're calling for parents to drive. All right, Watertown Mayor School District Superintendent Ron Wilkie, who is retiring this year. Congratulations. They are, if the hybrid, all right, let me rephrase this. So if the entire school decides to do or district decides to do the hybrid model, that's what they're going to do. If they decide to either do distance or in person, hybrid's not going to be an option for an individual family member. So please keep that in mind. If the hybrid model is what they're going to do, they're leaning towards that same A-B schedule that I outlined earlier. The World Learner Charter School in Chaska, Director Dina Siekman, they are calling for subs. They're going to have I mean, we talked about this on the last week too. There's going to be a shortage of teachers that could potentially happen if they need to social distance or they need to quarantine for 2 weeks at a time. They're going to need some subs. So if you have teaching experience or know someone who does, please or encourage them to look into that. They are planning for on-site learning unless there is some, MDH requirement that says, we've got too many cases here and you need to do distance. They are also going to offer a distance learning option. And students can check out technology from the school to bring home, which is really, really helpful. And I will say that a lot of the libraries now are offering, what do they call it, Wi-Fi hotspots that you can check out if you're having internet issues at home. And they are going to be really flexible on absenteeism, which is great. Cologne Academy Director Lynn Gluck-Peterson says that there will also be an option for distance learning. They're going to be doing daily health screenings completed by the parents at drop-off, which is great. And then they are putting in a lot of effort towards directional arrows and hand sanitizing stations and things like that to keep everybody safe when they're there. Again, if they do the hybrid model, they're going to do an A-B schedule, but have it be weekly. So the A students will go 1 week, and then B students are home, and then they'll swap the next week. They did not say anything about if the teachers would be on that same schedule. I'm sure that is going to come in the details a little bit later on. So there's a lot of variables here, right? And that's kind of what the governor was alluding to in his press conference. He's leaving it up to local control, which is customizable. It's a lot easier to be more fluid and be more district specific, which is what we heard, arguments on the House floor and the Senate floor during all special sessions, that's what they needed. So I'm not hearing a lot of praise for that, which is odd considering, that's what we heard a lot of speeches about. So I'm looking forward to seeing how each school district can work with MDE and MDH to get this, distance learning hybrid model or in person as appropriate and safe as it can be. I was extremely comforted personally by Lieutenant Governor Peggy Flanagan, her statement about there will be an option. Some people are ready to send their kids back to school. Some people are scared and not ready. Some people, teachers, same thing. Some people are ready to be in school. Some people are not ready. And there needs to be flexibility. So there needs to be an option. So to hear that specifically come from a lot of these school districts right here in Carver County is it's a sigh of relief for me personally. And I know for a lot of parents and students and teachers out there too that are concerned. I certainly wouldn't want to go back out in public, full time right now myself, but I know there's people that are, and we're going to need to give each other a lot of grace and latitude in this time. There's a lot of variables, and there is no game plan, that's practiced and been there before because we've never been here before. This is a brand new gig for a lot of us. So, just keep that in mind as well. Oh yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Ms. Gill. I appreciate that. I'm excited to talk to each one of these directors too. See what's on their mind and how they differ. And yeah, it's great. Someone commented on the phones earlier that, I just got a text that is very funny that someone is challenging me in the primary. Yep, it happens. I'll touch on that in a second, but, I talked to, okay. The thing that would be great, I always talk about fully funding public education, right? And I still stand by that, always will. One really good example of this is, Shakopee, for example, or St. Cloud. Those schools are very new and have the ability to have larger or like customizable rooms or wings that can be kind of sectioned off. And that's a lot to do with funding, right? And so if we had, smaller classes like they do at Central, it would be a lot easier to be safer social distancing and safer, teaching in person if we were funding that kind of thing. And we're now putting a lot of pressure on students and parents and teachers to provide their own, there's no communal supplies. There can't be like a communal coloring, crayon box, right? Each student is going to have to provide their own. And then there's an added cost to all the cleaning supplies and all the accommodations they need to do. So it's, we're all going to struggle trying to come out of this pandemic economically, both in the business world and education world. Not even talking about healthcare. This is vital that we do this right, and funding would help with that. So I certainly plan to fight for that when I get to the Minnesota Senate. Teachers are supposed to have the virtual option too. It's hard to imagine how a teacher can teach remotely if the school is doing the hybrid model. Yeah, that's a really good point, Nancy. And I've asked a couple teachers that I have spoken with, my cousin included, who, how does that work if you teach fifth grade and all the fifth graders want to come in? Are you then going to be, I'm just picturing like the Simpsons little robot head, in a group full of people, or is there another teacher that teaches eighth grade? It's now going to teach fifth grade? I'm not sure how that's going to work, and I'm not sure that we know yet. I know there has to be an option, which is great, but I'm not sure exactly the details of how that's going to work out. So I think we're going to learn a lot more in the next 2 weeks about what that looks like and how that's going to work. It's going to be tough, and I got to say I'm really glad I'm not a teacher right now. So props to you all that are watching that are teachers or school administrators or school board candidates or parents. This is tough, and my heart goes out to you. And please let me know, as always, if there's any questions on anything that I say on any of these and you need more detail, call me, text me, email me, direct message me, and just say, ask your question, and I'll find out for you. All right? Okay, so let's go on to Government 101. And again, throughout this whole thing, if there's any questions related to this topic or not, please ask me. This is going to be a lot more open-ended than our last one. So if you got questions, let me know. I do. Yeah, I did want to touch on the text I just got. Thank you for that. Very funny. I agree. There's an endorsement process that happens in Minnesota is a little bit different than other states. So we do have a caucus procedure, right? A process where someone can go out and get the endorsement. So for example, I went through the endorsement process with the DFL here and I got the endorsement. I was not challenged for that endorsement at the time, but then we have another period of time where someone could file to run for office regardless of not having that endorsement. And they can say that they are a member of this party, but they don't have the party's support. It's really hard to convey that on a ballot. So it really just comes down to, how much time are you putting in on the phones, on the doors, your outreach, if you're choosing to spend money on advertisements, which, we're not, we've got the more grassroots thing going on than, just spending a lot of money on advertisements at this point. I'm very protective of my donors' dollars, and the same way I will be very protective of taxpayer dollars and making sure that we're getting the best bang for our buck and using them appropriately. So it seems kind of silly that you can go through all this work and process and earn all this support and then be challenged kind of last minute because someone can pay the $100 and put their name on the ballot. But it's a great opportunity to flex your skills, right? To organize and fundraise and, win an election before we have to get to the general. So it's a little bit frustrating. I will admit I was a little irritated when that happened, but it is causing me to be a better candidate. And that's really what matters, right? It's pushing me to be a better candidate, which will push me to be a better elected official. So I guess in the end of the day, I say thank you, sir, for for challenging me. And he's not a bad guy. He's just I think I'm a lot bit better fit for this district. So yeah, we'll see what happens August 11th, but I do need your support. Sally, are the private schools making their own individual plans? I believe that they are. There's regional support staff for every region from the Minnesota Department of Education. So they have beefed up their staff a little bit so they can direct people to work with each individual school district and each individual school as well. So I believe, everything's going to have to follow guidelines, follow MDH, MDE, and CDC guidelines. You can't really supersede that. Within that, it's going to be a little bit more flexible as to how each individual school can function based on size and population. And it's really different between, Eastern Carver County and Western Carver County. So there's going to be a little bit more flexibility between those, or a little bit of a difference between how those schools operate. So it's, yeah, a lot of variables, a lot's up in the air. And I'm really thankful. I've got some friends at MD that have been, very forthcoming with how they're operating, and it's making me personally feel a lot better. So you guys, yeah, absolutely trust in MD and MDH to do the best that they can, do, right? Okay, so I've talked a little bit about this before, but we're going to expand on it a little bit. And actually, I need to plug in my computer. 1 second. All right, sorry about that. So Government 101, Schoolhouse Rock style. There's also, I think PBS did a digital video series, and it's called Crash Course on Government, and I highly recommend that. It's funny, we as staffers at the House, well, and I'm sure at the Senate too, we get a lot of questions about, why can't you vote for that, or why can't this person vote for this, or why can't you do anything about this issue? And the unfortunate answer sometimes is, well, that's a federal issue. State can't do anything about that, or that's an attorney general issue, or that's a lawyer issue, which is never what a staffer wants to tell somebody. Sorry, we can't help you. And luckily, it's rare that has to happen. You can usually, if you've got a good staffer or a good department, you can redirect to the necessary or the appropriate partner in whatever location they need to be in. So, for example, I work for the representative from Shakopee, and he has a really good working relationship with Congresswoman Angie Craig. And I am really good friends with a staffer that also works there. So we're in constant communication. If there's something that a constituent reaches out to them that they don't necessarily handle, they send them our way, and vice versa. So you see a lot of elected officials and their staff have that interaction. I will say the senators, it's a little bit more complicated just because they represent so many people, right? A congressional district is significantly smaller than the state. So there are a few more staffers at Senator Smith and Senator Klobuchar's office that handle specific issue areas that we can send them to, but it's not necessarily directly in line with what we do. So as a staffer at the House, we often have to know a little bit about a lot of things, or know who knows a little bit, or who knows more about that thing, so we can direct them to the right person. Federal level, congressional offices generally have issue-specific staffers, so people that know everything there is to know about agriculture, and that's the person that answers that question. So there's a bit of a difference there. So, all right, let's start back up at the top before I get to in the weeds, as I tend to do. So there are, as we know, in the Constitution, it says that there are 3 equal branches of government, so that one can't rule the rest of them or outweigh the rest of them. There's the legislative branch, the judicial branch, and the executive branch. Executive is president and cabinet. Judicial is the Supreme Court, and then all the courts underneath them. And then legislative is House and Senate. So there are 435 House members at the national level, and 100 senators at the national level. And a fun fact I just realized is that, or just learned, is that previously the U.S. House of Representatives used to elect the U.S. senators. So it always ended up being some, big donor or some person that was really high up on the popularity scale in the party, or some party official. And so they changed that with the 17th Amendment. So now they're elected, the way that we elect Senator Klobuchar and Senator Smith. So we have basically that same structure at the state level. So we have a House that consists of 134 members. We have a Senate that consists of 67 members. And one thing to note is that I always say, I'm running to represent Carver County. It is the majority of Carver County that just happens to be this district. There's a little section of Chanhassen that is in Senate District 33, where Gretchen Piper is running. Highly, highly recommend you vote for her if you live in her district. She's incredible. So districts don't generally necessarily fall on county lines. Ours just kind of happens to, which is really easy for us to say, running to represent Carver County. Rather than listing off all the cities in the district. There are a lot and a lot of townships. So the House members are elected every 2 years. So they run on a very consistent schedule, and their terms are 2 years. The Senate has 2-year terms on years ending in 0. So this year, I am running for a 2-year term. Then they have 4-year terms on elections on years ending in 12 or 2 or 6. So 2012, 2016, 2022. Those are 4-year terms. That has to do with redistricting and the census. So I'm going to put another plug in for the census. If you have not filled out your census, this matters. This is why it matters, all right? Representation. We need accurate representation that is sometimes based on numbers. And our redistricting is going to happen every 10 years. So 2020, it's going to happen, or the results are based on the 2020 results. And that matters. We don't want people in charge that are going to gerrymander districts or unfairly draw the maps. So please fill out your census if you have not already. It takes like 5 minutes, super easy, and tell your friends, family, neighbors, everyone to do it as well. There is not a citizenship question on there. Okay, fun fact. All right. So the U.S. Constitution says that the House has specific things that the Senate doesn't have, and the Senate has specific duties that the House does not have. The House has the duty to, or the option to impeach, which does not mean kicking a president out. It just means it's like a, we're charging him or her, future, with, something that could rise to the level of a trial. They also have they are the only body that can raise revenue. They can introduce bills to raise revenue. That doesn't come from the Senate. Now, the Senate has the responsibility to hold impeachment trials. They are also in charge of ratifying treaties, like the Treaty of Versailles, and they are in charge of confirming folks. So a lot of you that I've spoken with, my grandfather was actually confirmed by the Senate, and I have records of the testimony and the transcript from when that happened. He was in George Bush Sr.'s cabinet. He was his Assistant Secretary of Health and Human Services under George Bush Sr. So he had to be confirmed as a cabinet member and be questioned. And, it wasn't like the big production and attention that the Kavanaugh hearings or, Supreme Court hearings or confirmations draw. But he still had to do it, and the record's out there. So that does exist in the Senate only. The House, Minnesota state level, basically the same thing. So the Senate is in charge of confirming commissioners. I've worked very closely with Commissioner Olson from the Office of Higher Education, and he was confirmed recently. There was a little bit of a delay in a lot of the confirmation hearings at the Senate for obvious reasons that I will not drone on about again. We're just, we've got a Senate that doesn't like to work that hard, and we need some fresh blood in there and someone that, pushes to get things done like I promise you that I will. So they have the ability to confirm, or the right to confirm folks like that. And the House, any bill that raises revenue or raises taxes generates from the House, and then the Senate has to vote on it. All right. So law-wise, federal law is always going to trump, excuse the term, state law, and that's always going to supersede local law, unless those are directly in conflict, in which case that's generally typically decided by the judicial branch, U.S. or Senate, or state, depending on what it is. That's super complicated, and we won't get into it here, but I'm happy to at a later date as well. So a good example of that, let me think. Something that I specifically worked on. Okay, so there is the Office of Higher Education, Department of Higher Education at the federal level releases guidance, not laws, but they release guidance on specific things. And one of those things this year that they released new guidance on to replace the Obama administration's guidance on it was how colleges and universities need to handle sexual assault cases or accusations. And I met with a lot of Title IX coordinators and a lot of folks in Minnesota colleges and universities, really, really talented, intelligent, and deeply compassionate lawyers and folks that worked on these issues that helped us put together a bill. And it's kind of my pride and joy of this bill. I love the bill that we came up with, and I thank Chair Bernardi for letting me spearhead this effort and work on it. We knew that the DeVos recommendations coming out were not going to be ideal for victims and ideal for the way that our current system was operating. The University of Minnesota is a little bit different in how they do operate in this issue area as opposed to private colleges and state colleges. But they had a good system set up, and they didn't want it to have to change based on the DeVos recommendation. So we came up with a bill that would kind of preempt all of that, get ahead of it and say, this is our expectation for Minnesota law and how Minnesota colleges and universities need to plan and need to deal with that. We introduced it. We were unable to get it through the committee process in time before COVID hit. And there was some pushbacks that was completely fair, that, we were going to try to supersede federal law, which is, it's not how it all worked out. And there is times where, state legislatures make a law that doesn't necessarily line up with what a federal law later will come out with. It's up to that legislature, to either, change it, rescind it, that kind of thing, or it can go to court. And no legislator wants to see a bill that they worked on, be in conflict with federal law or federal case law, federal constitution, and then go to court. That's a worst nightmare. It's a fluid situation when you have ever-changing legislatures at the state and local level. So it's a good thing we've got a lot of attorneys on staff at all these different levels of government. So I actually do hope to continue working on that bill next year, starting in January when I'm elected, and make it go in line with federal guidelines. Another great example is tax conformity. So there are a few state legislatures that have written into their laws that like a rolling, what was the term I'm looking for? They adapt to whatever the federal law, if someone can think of the word I'm looking for, put it in the comments. They can adapt as the federal law changes, just automatic, confirmation or conformity to federal law. We don't have that in certain areas in our law, in our state law, and there's a big push to make that happen. And me being the rule follower that I am and like the legal nerd that I am, I think we should conform to make things clearer for people to understand. Everyone who pays taxes runs into this, you have this rule for this federal tax or this rule for this state tax, and they're different. And does this matter, or do I pay this one? And, it's really confusing in practice for people to understand. So my general feeling is that we should conform to federal law. That being said, that's not always desirable. There are things that are written into federal law that we would never want to write into state law. Things that could change, or things that are harmful, that kind of thing, that we might want to leave a little bit of wiggle room in. And, the only examples I can think of are really tiny policy wonk stuff, so I won't bore you guys with that. But that is something that is constantly talked about in committee that is not always the most interesting thing, but it is very important. Okay, so like I said before, the staffers get a lot of, not a lot, but enough inquiries as to, why are we, letting immigrants into our state, or why are we, whatever it might be. And there are a couple different issues that only states deal with, or only federal deal with, right? So the biggest one that is a federal issue that the states cannot do anything about is immigration. So we can't say the U.S. doesn't accept people from X country. We don't get a say in that. Different cities and counties and local governments can agree to accept refugees, or a certain amount of refugees. That's about it. That's all we can really do on immigration. So it's when people write in about immigration, it's hard. You got to send them to Congress, or your congressional representative, or their state senator. What we can do is make sure that things are safe here. So as far as immigration goes, we can't control who's here, right? Or who can come in legally, as long as they're here legally. Or, ICE is a whole different situation. I'll just leave that out for a second. But we can control the safety, okay? So we can make sure that everybody driving on Minnesota roads is licensed to drive. And this is what that means. They've taken a test. They've taken a class. They've passed the class and passed the test. And they're going to be safe drivers. And they're going to have insurance. So we can control things like that. We can't control immigration at large, if that makes sense. So another example is states have the sole authority to make police powers, basically. So making laws about the general health, welfare, and safety of its citizens. We have the right to do that as a state. Yeah, any questions so far? We're kind of silent in the comments here, guys. I'm going to run out of things to talk about. All right, so we'll move on to the committee process that I've talked about before. So if this is boring you and you're watching this later, skip ahead. So the committee process basically means, or it entails, let's start with selection first. So the House and the Senate leadership decide who of the membership is on what committee. You can request, and each caucus does it a little bit differently. So depending on who's in charge, right, who's the majority party, they do it a little bit differently. I know Speaker Hortman asked for preferences. So you can say, you know, I really want to be on the healthcare committee, HHS. I really want to be on higher education or ag, whatever. And they can decide to honor that or not. There's a lot of really detailed discussion that goes into that I personally have not been a part of, so I'm not going to comment on it here, but I know it's a very tough decision for leadership to make. They do try to make it as even as possible, vote-wise, so you give those bills and those committees a chance to vet those bills appropriately. So you're not just constantly having one party vote and overrule the other party. You're actually having great discussions and trying to win over votes. That's the theory. Not always the practice, but that's the theory. Right? There's also a rules committee. And the rules committee, sometimes there's an ethics committee too, or an ethics subcommittee. But the rules committee will say if something is appropriate to do. You know, I introduced this bill, but it was late. And can we make an exception because of this one thing? The rules committee is the one that says yes or no to that. Rules and ethics are also who decides if there's some type of issue with one of the representatives or senators, they can decide to take action. They can't, I'm not sure if they can necessarily remove the people from office, but I know they can remove them from committees. For example, there was a representative this past year that had an unfortunate run-in with a lot of alcohol and some security guards. And as a result, that person was removed from one or two committees. That's within the Rules Committee and the leadership of that body to make that determination. Oh yeah, and hey, Jay put Gretchen Piper's website. If you live in that part of Chanhassen that's not in Senate District 47, click on that. She's awesome. And Sally said, thank you for explaining it all to us. It's fun. It's my pleasure. I used to teach horseback riding lessons, so I kind of miss that like teaching people things. That's a really fun aspect of what I get to do. You know, talk about separation of powers and that kind of thing. I'm such a nerd. I love this stuff. All right. So the bills process. Okay, say I want to introduce a bill. Let's pick a good one. Statewide broadband. I want to invest money into the statewide broadband program. So I'm going to introduce a bill, which means I have worked with my partisan staff researchers, my nonpartisan staff researchers, and the revisor's office, which is full of really smart attorneys that make sure that the bills are written in an appropriate way that doesn't conflict any other laws on the books, theoretically. And they get it right like 99.9% of the time. These people are very talented, and they are nonpartisan, so they're there all the time. They work with whoever comes to them. And we worked very closely with them this last year trying to get this one law right. So they're geniuses. So I want to introduce a bill that is investing money into statewide broadband and expanding this into rural areas of Carver County, right? So I'm going to work with those people, get the bill drafted. I'm going to sign on to it. It looks a lot better if you have bipartisan support right away. So you generally want to have, and this is not everyone's way of doing things. This is what I plan to do when I'm there. I would get a member of the other party to be my second signer. And then in the Senate, you can only actually have 5 authors on a bill. The House, I believe, is a lot. It's a lot more. It's almost unlimited, I think. And you can have a clone bill and that kind of thing. But it's 5 authors for the Senate. So I would want to show that this bill has bipartisan support. I'm going to get those authors to sign on it too. Maybe someone's approached me and said, I support that bill too. I'll let you carry it, but I want to be a co-signer on it. Great. Have them sign it. You're going to drop it in what we call the hopper, which I thought was really cool when I first started working at the House. It's just a basket It's just a basket that's by the speaker's office. So you drop it in, and then it gets introduced the next time on the floor during floor session, and that's when it gets a bill number. So sometimes you'll see committees say, we're going to have a hearing on this bill, this bill, this bill, and one of the bills is just X, 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 X. That is not encouraged, but it is allowed as long as by the time the committee is hearing the bill and taking action on the bill, it has a bill number, and you have a quorum, and all the, I's are dotted and T's are crossed kind of thing. So it's going to go generally to the first, sorry, there's 5 turkeys walking in my front yard right now. Anyway, so it's going to go towards the committee that it relates to. So for this broadband, the bill would probably go towards, I think, I'm trying to remember what the Eklund's bill went through at the House. Someone that's my coworkers that are watching can probably redirect me on this. But it went through the Greater Minnesota. I think it went through Labor Committee, that kind of thing. So it'll go to one committee, and you can ask the staff to direct it to a certain committee if you think it needs to go there first. There are specific rules on certain bills that require it. It's called a mandatory referral, and it'll have to go through one committee. So, for example, the Government Operations Committee had to hear any bill that established a task force. So we had a bill that we worked on in the Environment Committee to establish a task force to look at and study the harmful effects of PFAS, PFAS, which is a chemical that is in things like de-icing liquid on airplanes, firefighting foam, that kind of thing. And it goes into groundwater and it builds up, it never dissipates. So we needed a task force. And so you would think, oh, that only has to go through the environment committees. No, it actually had to go through environment policy, environment finance, and government operations. So you follow the mandatory referrals. Being a staffer and knowing how this works is a huge leg up that I have in going to be an elected official, because I know exactly, which committee my bills are going to need to go to, how to get in there, how to get them heard. And I've already built up these relationships with all of these staffers that can make that happen, which I really think is vital. So I've got a little bit of a leg up on the competition on that one. So you go through these committees, right? And they're vetting your bill and its particular intersection in that committee. So when the broadband bill goes through the Labor Committee, we're not going to talk about XYZ. We're only going to talk about the people that are going to be building this infrastructure, right? And the labor that goes into it. Judiciary is a good example of that too. They heard a bill, there was a DUI bill, so it would allow conservation officers at the DNR to enforce our DUI laws and not have to wait for a police or other law enforcement officer, police officer to come out and detain the person. That the conservation officer saw someone drunk snowmobiling, they can detain that person. That doesn't exist right now, it's silly. It's a little loophole in the law we need to fix. That had to go through judiciary because it has to deal with a crime, essentially. So that little intersection is only what they talked about in that committee. So it's important to know, what your bill says and what it does and how it intersects with each different committee so you can get it through appropriately. There's also a lot of legwork to be done. Some senators and representatives will just introduce a bill and kind of see what happens. That's not my MO. That's not how I operate. So when I introduce bills, I plan to chase them, make them happen. So, get involved with staff, get involved with my co-authors, get involved with leadership, and make sure, hey, this bill is really important. When is it going to get a hearing? I'm going to be ready for that hearing. Here are my testifiers. Here's how long it's going to take, and that kind of thing. And I'm going to walk in there knowing if I have the votes or I don't. And you do that by building up relationships with people from both sides of the aisle. It's going to be incredibly, incredibly important to have those relationships built up so you can walk into someone's office and say, hey, do you like this bill? What don't you like about it? Let's talk about how to fix that. Some of the best ideas that I personally witnessed happen is a result of those conversations. Walking down with a representative friend of mine and watching them, walk into someone's office of the other party and say, let's talk about this bill. What do you think? Okay. And then come up with some great idea to offer an amendment in committee to change it before it gets to the House floor so you have a little bit more support behind it. Another thing I do want to mention is that there's a really, really good chance that the DFL is going to win the majority in the Senate this year. So it's going to be really important that whoever Carver County decides to send to the Senate, and I think the House is going to maintain the DFL majority as well, so it's going to be important in the House as well that we send people that are willing to work together. Not that are going to say, you know, that person's from this party, I'm not going to work with them, but someone who is willing to work together to make things happen. And I've said from day one, and I will continue to say, that I am that person. I am the only person in this race who does not have a problem with members of the other party. Certain members, yes, but not the party in general, right? That's just, the partisan stuff is just paralyzing the state. It's the reason we don't have a bonding bill right now, to be quite honest with you. So yeah, that's not going to be me when I get there. I'm very interested in progress and making things happen and getting things done. How much turnover is there in staff at the legislature? That's a really great question. The House and the Senate have different staff structure setups. The nonpartisan staff is basically the same. So nonpartisan is employed by that body. And then in the House, for example, the staff is employed by the caucus, so the DFL caucus or the GOP caucus, and the partisan staff. And then in the Senate, each senator has the responsibility to hire their own assistant. So you're actually employed by that one senator rather than the caucus, which has advantages and disadvantages. You get to work a little closer with your senator, but you might not have the HR protections that we have as staff in the House, that kind of thing. So it's a little bit different, a little bit interesting. From my understanding from my previous supervisor who just retired, she's just the most incredible woman I've ever met, Mary Faust. She indicated that in recent years, the turnover has been a lot higher. I think folks get in and don't really know what that job entails, whether it's, you know, legislative assistant, research assistant, whatever it is. And it's not what they thought it was. And so the turnover is a little bit higher. The other thing I've noticed is there's a lot more turnover in election years. So folks that are leaving their full-time positions or taking a leave of absence to go work on a campaign and then come back, there's actually a lot of that happens. It's really interesting. And it's interesting to hear like who people worked for that you would have never predicted or never guessed. So there's a fair amount, I will say, in the partisan offices and less so in the nonpartisan offices. A lot of those nonpartisan research, so you have partisan and nonpartisan research. Nonpartisan research, a lot of those folks have been there for like 20, 30, 40 years. Hey, Senator Freds is here. We can certainly ask him about it, about staffing too. We were just discussing the difference between Senate and House staff and nonpartisan and partisan staff and that kind of thing. So if you got anything, feel free to chime in. The partisan staff, there are a few that I know personally that have been there for 25 years, and they're in committee administrator positions or supervisor positions, and they're a wealth of knowledge. I will give you a call. Yes, thank you. I definitely will. All right. Full-time. Okay, I did want to comment too that the staff, while the legislature is technically part-time, so right now we're in interim, senators and representatives are not there. They're not present at the Capitol, but their staff is. So when you're calling into the Capitol or emailing or whatever, the staff is still there. So I still have, for example, a full-time job, thank goodness. So your needs will still be met, even though the representatives and senators aren't there. There is one state in the U.S. that has a unicameral legislature, so they don't have the difference between House and Senate. They just have, yeah, thank you, Senator. They just have one, which is very interesting. And if anyone can guess it, I'm going to wait a couple minutes. Don't Google it. Just try to guess in the comments of who it is. You'll never guess. I was surprised by it. And there's some states that are full-time legislature and some states that are smaller, amount of time legislature that we are when they're actually in session. So it kind of varies state to state. Our setup is good. I would like it better, I think, if the senators and representatives, if it was a full-time job rather than part-time. But, that it takes a lot to change that. I don't see that changing anytime soon. So we've got a pretty good working setup as far as staff and elected officials go. So it's working out well for us here. What else did I want to say? We talked about partisan and nonpartisan. Media is another one. So each caucus will have their own media team. And trying to think, there is House Public Information and Senate Public Information Services. So those are full-time folks that are nonpartisan, and they basically just disperse information, scheduling, and it's not New Hampshire. Good guess, though. All right. It's Nebraska. I know, crazy. I would like to just go and see how it works one time. I'm just, yeah, a nerd like that. But it is it is Nebraska. So, um, so yeah, media, they have their own, partisan and nonpartisan. Constituent services is another good one. The Senate does not, I don't believe, correct me if I'm wrong, do not have their own constituent services department. Each individual assistant will handle everything there is to do with constituent services. We at the House, we meaning me as a staffer at the House, we have a constituent services department that handles really complicated things, really detailed things. So if someone writes in and says, hey, I'm having trouble getting unemployment to pay out, or, I'm having trouble with SNAP assistance requirement, whatever it might be. I don't personally have those contacts in unemployment offices. Our constituent services department does, so they are able to handle things like that. The Senate, each one individual person handles it. So a little bit different in the job role titles, but yeah. All right, any other questions in the comments? Otherwise, I'll, talk about decorum and how you should behave in the legislature. I feel very, very, very passionately that there is a little bit of a lack of trust in government right now. Federal level more so than state level, and state more so than local. But we as folks that work in government and elected officials need to do everything we can to build that trust back up. That's not going to come from attack ads. It's not going to come from, shenanigans on the House floor and Senate floor, or shenanigans in committee, or, people worry that senators and representatives are taking government money and taking pay, because they are paid by taxpayer dollars, and doing, whatever they want, going golfing during committee, things like that. So it's of the utmost importance that our elected officials behave in a way that we think that they should, right? So not, causing a ruckus, not, expending political capital on things that are never going to change, or things that are really not our, state issue, that is a federal issue, and conducting themselves in a way that we're proud of. So I, for one, would never want to never, ever in my life want to send anyone to any office that is just going to go in there and be an antagonist and just fight everybody, and just, I want to get on TV, I want to be elected to a higher office, I want to get a lot of Twitter buzz going. Those are sometimes the exciting people to watch. Those are the, Trumps of the world. Those are the AOCs of the world. Those are very exciting people to watch. And sometimes, in AOC's case, for their district, that's okay. For us in Carver County, that's not okay. All right. We've got way too much at stake. We've got a ton of different, diversity of people to represent here, that we can't be doing that. That's getting us nowhere, from what we've seen at the state legislature now, and that will continue to just further divide us if we're sending people there that are just going to be exactly disruptive. That's a perfect word for that. I was raised to not ever do that, right? To see the good in everything, and to actively work to make connections with people on the other side of the issue. From the time I was a small child, and through, debate and speech team, and law school, and now working at the state legislature. I have that experience at every stage of my life, and it's integrated in who I am, and it's something that I'm very proud of, and something that I'm really looking forward to being your state senator. And, I'm not elected to represent just one party, right? I'm elected to represent the entirety of Carver County, of District 47. And that is exactly what I intend to do. I will always listen, even if I disagree, almost especially if I disagree. Sometimes it's fun to be in an echo chamber of things that you think and everyone around you thinks are right. But how we get to the better bills and the better laws is having those tough discussions with people that you don't agree with. So I'm always going to be game for those. And I'm always going to be trying to look for the next greatest idea, and how we can incorporate or make things that we have on the books already better and more effective for everybody that we represent, right? So just my 2 cents. We are at our 3 o'clock time. Anyone who has any questions as we go on throughout this and through any time, really reach out, text, call, email. Don't forget to vote in the primary. Please, please, please don't forget to vote in the primary. And if you have not ordered your lawn sign yet from us, go ahead and do that on the website. Thank you all for your very, very nice compliments in the comments. And yeah, all right. We will be back next week with a different topic, and stay tuned for what that will be. Yeah, and as always, any questions, just let me know. Okay, I do want to read this before we go. I like what you say on your website. I believe, yeah. So what I do say on this website, on my website, I believe in doing what's right. This makes sense to me, and I'm not seeing that in elected officials. I do. I don't care where a good idea comes from. If it's a good idea, it's a good idea. I learned that in horse training too. A good horse is a good horse. It doesn't matter how it's bred, who trained it. A good horse is a good horse. A good law is a good law, right? A good idea is a good idea. And, I stand by that. Oh, Jay, thank you. We do offer t-shirts as well. We do have t-shirts. They're a little bit expensive. So if you could donate in addition to ordering a t-shirt, that would be ideal. That would help us out a lot. So I will comment too. Someone asked where our donations go to. Donations equals reach, right? So I'm the only one running in this race that doesn't have an election certificate yet. This is my first time running a campaign, and I've never been elected to a political office. I have to other things, but so dollars equals reach. So it's gonna, allow us to pay some canvassers to make phone calls. It's gonna allow us to put money towards mailers. Mailers are very, very expensive. And to reach a lot of the demographic in this district, we're going to need to send out some mailers. It's going to allow us to reach a lot more in digital advertising. And then all the cool stuff too. T-shirts, lawn signs, buttons, all that cool stuff. That helps too. So if you really, really, really believe in this campaign, dollars and time are the best 2 things that you can do. You can donate your time to make phone calls. You can donate your dollars to give us a little bit more reach and have us, give our message to a wider swath of people. That doesn't necessarily have to come from you. You could ask 5 of your friends to donate, 10 of your friends to donate. That helps us a lot too. So we did outraise one of our opponents, not the other one. So that's my next goal, is to outraise the other one and, reach as many people as we possibly can. So every dollar counts. Right. Yeah. Cool. I'll let you guys go. Enjoy the rest of this gorgeous, gorgeous Sunday. I'd like to hear your thoughts on county commissioner and how you interact with that. Seems like there's some hype around it and would like to understand more. That is a great idea. I have a lot to say about the county commissioner. So Tim, let's put a pin in that, and then we'll do that next week. I'll write it down to remind myself that we will have a county commissioner, local government interaction discussion for next week. So thank you. Thank you for that question. Thanks for tuning in. All right, everyone, go enjoy your Sunday. Don't forget to vote in the primary. Join me for a phone bank if you can, and we'll see you next week.